Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the FPL Scope podcast. Finally back again for the first time since Gameweek 11. It's been a long time. I'm back here with Kevin as always, or as we used to do always at least. But we're back, and we're going to be way more consistent going forward. There's a couple of reasons for that, but I'm not going to get too much into that. But what we're going to get into is what has happened since last time. A lot of things has happened since Game Week 11, and especially the last week, both West Ham, my team, my favorite team, and Everton, Kevin's favorite team, have gotten new managers. And the main man is, of course, the manager that has been manager twice for both teams. David Moyes is back with Everton. So first and foremost, Kevin, before we get into how you've been and everything like that, how are you feeling about Everton sacking Sean Dyche, getting in David Moyes? The Moyesiah is back. How are you feeling about the whole thing?
I mean, I think the most important thing is the fact that Moyes is back. I think there's not anyone else who should take our inaugural season at the new stadium. So I feel that it's completely fitting for him to be the one to do it rather than Dyche Ball, which has been he did the business for the season that he took in charge and kept us up and all this type of stuff. And, kudos for that. But it was always limited. It always felt limited. And I had been Dyche out for a while, considering the fact that the results weren't good, winnable games completely thrown away, and the football, just generally speaking, looked so stagnant. And it seems maybe like a backwards move to then get Moyes in, but I think David Moyes at least plays a more encouraging style of football, and I think it's just a presence thing as well. Him being back at his former love in Everton and the club that he spent so much time with, I think it's just the perfect move. I think it's safe for the 2 years that we have planned to have him, and gives us more than enough time to find a successor that is good enough to take Everton to new heights. We were hoping for Graham Potter. We were hoping for, an Eddie Howe. But unfortunately, Newcastle, West Ham, very clever in when they appointed their managers in during these times where we were like on the cusp of firing someone and all this type of stuff. So the
Yeah.
timing's just never been right. However, I think this is the perfect timing for someone like David Moyes. So
Yeah.
I far welcome it. I understand the criticism. I understand sort of the feeling of going backwards, but for me, this is a great move, especially considering the fact that it's short term.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a 2-year contract. So, and like you said, going to be the first season at the new stadium. Also going to be a couple of lasts at Goodison Park as well, which is going to be nice. The last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, which is coming up in Game 24, as we now know because of the postponed game week from earlier. A lot of big things ahead with Moyes, and yeah, take it for someone that has gone through getting Moyes back and sort of like going back to or going backwards, like you said. It worked out pretty well for West Ham, getting the best period in the Premier League era, basically ever, getting that European champion trophy as well. Like, I think Moyes is perfect for where Everton are currently, where you need to like stabilize as like a top half level team in the Premier League. I think Moyes is perfect for that, and then after that, maybe go for a more like progressive new type of manager. But for now, I think he's like perfect for Everton, and especially given the situation. So really fun. But also, this is going to affect Fantasy Premier League as well, which is what we're here to talk about, as always, on the FPL Scope podcast. And specifically with the new chip that we have this season. I know you're not the biggest fan of the chip, but maybe that is something that could give you what I'm looking for, a reason to use it quickly as well, because now you can actually use it on Everton in a double game week in Game Week 24, which is the first possibility to use it. So have you thought about using the chip? Is it something that you could potentially use with Everton? Because I know you're sort of like for anyone that doesn't know you, you're kind of a vibes type of manager, and you do like what you feel like doing, and something that is fun to watch for you as well in FPL. Could you see yourself using the assistant manager chip, the ass man chip as we name it? Could you see yourself using it in Game Week 24, or is it something you want to save later on in the season, you think?
Because it's a 3 week or 3 game week period, that this is used. I think there's a lot of maths that goes into it as well because table positioning of the opponents matter as well, which is hilarious because you could then technically go for like a City who have been struggling, but because like a random team, I mean, I wouldn't say a random team in Nottingham Forest, credit where credit's due, but for example, they're all the way as high up as they are. If they were to face them and beat them, that gives you X amount of points and all this type of stuff too. So there's a whole meta game to it that comes in sort of consideration to who I end up picking. But would I pick Moyes for a cheeky 0.5? You bet I will. But it's just a question of do I believe that that's the best period to do it? Like, cool. But the game after that is pretty good, so
Yeah.
potentially.
We're going to get more into it later on the podcast because we're going to look at the fixture ticker and we have Gameweek 24, 25, 26 for all 20 teams in the Premier League. So we can actually see like the first and one of the best possibilities to use it in a double game week with Liverpool and Everton this time around. That is like one of the windows where people are looking to use the chip because it is a very powerful chip and you want to use it in a double game week. So we're going to look more into that eventually in the podcast. We have a lot of things to get through. So let's just start with what we always start with, which is your score from this past game week, Game Week 20. You ended up with 75 points, -4, because you took a hit to get a full squad of 15 players because you did use your bench boost. And then ended up getting, 14 points, which is decent, I guess, but you also did -4 to bring in enough players for it. So I guess you could have just saved yourself the Bowen to Gordon transfer and started Fernandes and saved the bench boost, and you would have had a pretty similar score and still had the bench boost. But at the same time, Gordon was actually a good transfer. Like Bowen is injured for a month, and Gordon could have had way more points than those 7 points he scored really early in the game. Had several chances. He had to be subbed off early because of like a really freak injury, like a Kulusevski crashed into him, which is kind of crazy that wasn't given as a penalty considering what Brighton got as a penalty against Arsenal. But yeah, anyways, you had a pretty interesting game week in general, and it's been such a long time since we last caught up on the podcast. So how do you feel about the team in general? What went into your moves for Game Week 20, and how do you feel it worked out with the bench boost chip and stuff? Like, what was your thinking using the bench boost? Because I know it was like a late decision, as it often is with you. So take us through Game Week 20 and like the game weeks leading into it, how you've done since last time, and how your team is looking for the future, in your opinion.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think it was just one of those decisions where I was just like, I want to get the system manager chip ready for the double game week and all this other stuff. And I just genuinely believed that I had a good enough team that could do better. Like, if you consider some of the matches and how teams conceded and stuff, it's just really, really stupid. Like, Mikolenko with the Bournemouth game, it looked like it was going to be a boring 0-0, and then all of a sudden they scored the one chance that they pretty much got, and then Rico Lewis, same sort of thing. I mean, Leicester were knocking on the door left and right. They were a bit lucky to only concede once, but again,
that was West Ham. Fulkrug, West Ham 4-1.
Oh, sorry, the West Ham game. Sorry.
Yeah.
West Ham, yeah, exactly. You could argue that West Ham had a lot of chances and stuff like that, but even when you look at the highlights and I've seen multiple different teams put the highlight up, the one highlight that everyone likes to put up, West Ham obviously had a slightly more, but like just generally speaking, the only highlight was the Fulkrug thing and maybe one Kudus attack where he sort of like takes a scuffed shot.
Should have scored twice in the first like 10 minutes, but other than that, yeah.
And like some of these sort of like, I don't think it was, considering the fact that I benched Hall for a Hall, it was a bit frustrating. The Solanke just randomly scored. So, and they took the lead, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, it seemed like everything was going completely against the run of play. Ismail Assar, again, could have, with the money that I have in my bank, it could have been Eze, and Eze's been getting like the random goal and assist here and there. So it's a bit of like a sour thing for me because I could have had Eze, but Sar's been super unlucky not to get more. He's constantly involved. He's constantly creating chances, and sadly, he's being like Amad Diallo in missing chances, but of course Amad
Yeah.
Diallo scored in the weekend, so
Yeah.
kudos to him and anyone who kept him.
He's also getting more minutes than SA as well. Like SA keeps getting
Yeah,
subbed off
yeah,
and Sar keeps playing on. So yeah,
yeah.
I think it's actually like I think it's a better pick than SA personally, but it's pretty close between them.
So for me, it then became like a issue as well in the team as a whole. I thought a bunch of teams would do a lot better than they did, uh, but including Trent, I did not expect them to finish with a whopping zero after
Yeah,
getting a big haul. So
awful game from him.
yeah. And already within a week, he's already seemed to proven that he's going to start again. So, it's one of those funny things where people are like, oh, contract this. And to be fair, he's an awful defender. I welcome a move to Real Madrid if that ends up happening. Like, yes,
No, you
in
don't.
matches where they're no, like in matches where he's expected to win like 8-0, he's going to be the reason why they do. But against us, fine, he has the one corner taken quickly bullshit. But defensively speaking, he's going to be absolutely rinsed by the best Brazilian in the world right now, which is Rafinha. So, yeah, so I welcome that move. But in regards to my bench boost, it was also a headache of João Pedro or Bruno Fernandes, and I
Yeah,
felt like both were going to do well, and both ended up doing well.
yeah,
I mean, Bruno's assist was absolutely crazy, and in the sense of he could have definitely had more. There was some penalty shouts and all this type, like anything could have happened in regards to that. And Juan Pedro, luckiest penalty I've seen in a while because like it was a coming to. I see why it was given as a pen, but we've seen worse collisions and them saying nothing. So
yeah. Like the Kulusevski
um,
thing with
yeah,
Gordon.
yeah, absolutely. But generally speaking, 14 points. Should I be angry? Eh, it could have been better, but I also smashed my triple captaincy, so like
Yeah, you
it
got
is
a
what it
return at
is.
least from Fernandes. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and also like I've said this like several seasons now. I think bench boost is sort of more of a headache than it is like an attribute. Like I think it's kind of a dull chip. Like if they're gonna swap out a chip for next season or something, I think bench boost is one of the ones that I'd personally like to see they get rid of because it's more of a headache. You have to like plan ahead, make your changes to the team and stuff to accommodate everything, and usually it doesn't really do that much damage either. So yeah, I don't really mind it using it, especially in your situation where you had like a pretty good team of 15 players and you had a bit of a benching headache between Fernandes and João Pedro, like you said. Like I don't mind you using it, even though you did -4 to do it, I guess, which is the one drawback, I guess. But yeah, I think it's fair enough, and I think your team is actually looking pretty good as well for the future. Like you've pretty much future-proof your team now. I think your midfield is really strong. I think you might actually have like my whole pretty much the whole midfield that I have in the weekly wildcard draft, apart from I think I have Rodgers over Sar, but that's really close anyway. So yeah, Isak is obviously fantastic. Wood is like the main man for a lot of people now. João Pedro has been scoring lately. He's a really cheap and good asset. You have Robinson, who's really good offensively. You have Hall, who's like the best defender to have currently. Trent is going to have a double game week. He's going to be good. You have two like goalkeepers that are okay, I guess. So yeah, I think your team is looking actually really good. So I think you should be pretty happy about the position that you're in terms of your team. Yes, you still have a pretty good season overall as well. Like you're not that far behind me. What's your current rank? Do you know?
It's like
300k or
close
something?
to 280 to 90K. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're having a pretty good season, and your team is looking pretty good for the next few game weeks as well. So yeah, I think you should be pretty happy about that. Let's move on straight away to Kimo, the third founding member of the FPL School podcast, who had a really good game week with 85 points. But still, for me, there are some question marks there. I'm not sure if I like the transfers. Cunha to Wood, I do like. I think that was a good transfer considering Wood had a good chance to score against Wolves, and they did. But then, like, downgrading Aït-Nouri to Bednarek, who's just like a dud. You don't really have any use for him, basically. He plays for Southampton if he gets to play. Do that to upgrade Nicholas Jackson to Watkins. Like, I get it. Watkins had Leicester at home. That was a really good fixture. But at the same time, they were playing without Rodgers, who has, as you know, Rodgers has fed Watkins so many passes throughout the season that Watkins has scuffled. But sometimes he scored as well from them. So Yes, I had belief in Watkins in this game week 20, but long term, John Duran is back from suspension. They just bought Daniel Malin from Dortmund. That was already rumored. So, yeah, I have some question marks about the transfers for Kimo here, but can't really fault the game week with 85 points. Mbuemo with 19 points, Kirkus with 12 points, Sels Ingol with 9 points, which I know you were kind of annoyed by because they really should have conceded in that game. So those are my quick comments about Kimo's team. He has all chips remaining, which is really good for him, obviously. Same for me. But yeah, looking at this team, any weak points, anything you think he should change and swap out, and what do you think about the long-term outlook for Kimo's team after a really successful game week and a really good season so far? Like, Kimo's slightly ahead of me, so he's around 100k I think overall. I think it's inside the top 100k actually. But yeah, what do you think about Kimo's team and his outlook for the season?
Yeah, generally speaking, a pretty balanced team. I think the one not issue, like, I understand the appeal of Luis Diaz, especially considering the fact that when he does play, he scores, but when he does also plays, is he going to play 60 minutes? Is he going to play 90 minutes, sort of thing? He's a massive rotation risk. So I would have, for example, have swapped him um, for Gordon, for example. Aren't they similar price range? If not,
they're pretty similar priced. Yeah.
So he's 7.5 now because he's obviously gone up since last time. Let me just double check Diaz.
I mean, I can't really fault him. Like, going into that Man United game, I get why he kept Diaz for that game because we all expected him to beat them like 4 or 5-0. But we've seen from Man United now that they are actually a pretty good team against the bigger teams. Like, they beat Man City, they drew against Liverpool, and now they beat Arsenal in the cup as well through penalties. So
yeah. And also considering the fact that he is actually cheaper than, which is crazy in itself, is cheaper than that. Cheaper than Diaz. And of course, with the Mbeumo's, a lot of difficult matches going forward. So obviously, really well done keeping him against his favorite Southampton team. But I think going forward, that could be something that could be addressed, especially, for example, if you believe that Luis Diaz is going to be good during this double game week side.
Yeah,
bring in Gordon instead of Mbeumo, and just leave Diaz if you want to go with that, and pick the assistant manager if that's what you end up doing. But generally speaking, I also don't get the Bednarik thing, but whatever. I guess he believes in his 11 that much, and Watkins.
I think it's just to save money to get Watkins, basically.
But I also think that Watkins doesn't have the best matches. Like, Everton away, easy peasy. Or is it
David Moyes,
Arsenal,
new manager?
Arsenal away. You know, he gave City the league last year in that fixture, quite literally. True. And then it's West Ham, then it's Wolves, then it's Ipswich.
New manager bounce.
And then it's just a lot of I don't know.
Especially going into game week 30.
A mixed gab. It's such a mixed bag, and then you look at Chelsea. Chelsea's is as mixed bag, if not as good as the other fixtures. So Chelsea have been doing great, and I think Jackson has been super unlucky not to get more. Yeah. So I get it. I get the frustration out of him, because then you have someone like Chris Wood who gets like one chance and scores, and that's it. Bonus 3. Time. So, and to be fair, he has blanked in 4 games in a row.
Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, which includes one cameo, which was 35 minutes long. So
yeah. So I don't know. We could get into Jackson now, actually. Like, what do you feel about him as an asset? If you had him in your team, would he be someone you'd look to sell, or do you think you should just stick it out with him and hope that he gets back on track and starts scoring again? Like, what do you feel about Nicholas Jackson as a pick currently?
It's difficult. It depends on who you transfer him for. If you're some idiot who didn't go with the Isak until now, go get the player of the month right away and swap Jackson to him. But unless there's like a really clear-cut striker that you can get for similar price, or if you want to make a cut.
Who would that be? Isak is one. Is someone else? Wood, I guess.
Yeah, I would say
Anyone else you would like swap him out for free? Like Mateta,
not really.
Solanke,
Yeah, Mateta's interesting.
Wissa. I don't know.
Obviously, I would have said Holland from Leicester onwards because look, 8th and 13 is pretty good returns for the Mega Man, but
Yeah.
um, I would also consider um, now that Juan Pedro got himself injured, the idiot, I would have said him as well. But I think Jackson is. I think put things into perspective. He has like 30 points less than Holland. Like that's quite little if you put stuff into perspective. So
Yeah.
I think he's still a viable pick.
Hmm.
But if you're like that tired of him, I get it. But you have to make sure that you're getting someone who's a sure hitter. And
Yeah.
there are very few of those. That seems to be the thing. It's like 1 week strikers are the thing you have to have. And then the week after, midfielders and
Yeah.
essentially Salah is the thing you have to have. And then the week after, strikers are back on the menu. All strikers are scoring except the one you have. So it's like you can't win with FPL in these sort of ways. You just have to catch it, like we did with Cunha, for example. We
Yeah.
got very lucky that we got the Cunha points when we did, because when everyone got on board, oh, punch his staff and whatever. So
He still
yeah,
got points
I
after
mean,
that though, which is kind of crazy. Like
yeah,
the ban took such a long time, and he managed to get some points after that as well. And then yeah, now he
but
has served his
like
ban
I
already.
would 100% said Cunha before as well, but their matches are ass.
Yeah, they're terrible, but
So
I think it's worth keeping on the bench, I guess, potentially. But yeah.
yeah,
So yeah,
but
so
I
you
also
think?
think that
Yeah, go ahead.
there is one more player I forgot to say who I think we've always discussed, but we always thought that his Brazilian counterpart was going to be the main guy. Raul Jimenez is also definitely someone
Yeah,
I'd say deserves a sneaky pick because, yeah, man, he's playing well lately.
and he plays West Ham this week, and he always scores against West Ham. He always scores against Everton. He always scores against West Ham. Like that's you can bank on that every time. So
Correct.
yeah, he's a decent option as well for a cheap price, which is something good. Like 'cause like you said, it switches back between forwards, midfielders, what you want to have. And currently, I feel like there's a lot of good midfielders. Like even Mbuemo, I don't think he's a sell. We're going to get into that eventually. Luis Diaz has a double game week. And then Rogers is decent. Amad Diallo is cheap and good. Bruno Fernandes is good. Man United looking better now, and there's a fixtures and stuff. Ismail Assar, SA, those types of guys are pretty good. Gordon, obviously, Palmer, Salah. Like, there's a lot of good midfield options now. So yeah, I think potentially, like I said, if you have Jackson and you want to get a midfielder, you want to get some money, potentially downgrade Jackson to a cheaper striker. But if you don't really need the money, I think Jackson is still a pretty good hold. Personally, I think he's obviously a good player. He's just in a bit of a slump currently. But I think he's going to start scoring again sooner rather than later. So we've seen that in the past with Solanke, who had like a couple game weeks where he really sucked, and then he got like that huge score, like 16 points, I think, against Aston Villa. We saw Mbuemo had a couple game weeks where he struggled, and then all of a sudden he exploded as well. So I think you should just keep sticking with Jackson, and I think he is going to return at some point. He is that type of player as well. Like when he gets his confidence, he's going to be really good. So I personally would just keep him, and especially if I was Kimo going into this past game week, I definitely would have kept him rather than doing the double move that he did. But either way, 85 points. We gotta give credit where credit is due to Kimo. He has had Kirkus for a long while. He's been really, really good the last few game weeks. He's kept Mbuemo, I guess, for the season. I'm not sure if he ever sold him, but that has worked out really nicely because he's been really good. So yeah, I think he should have just done the same with Jackson and kept his faith in him, I guess. But yeah, pretty good for Kimo. 85 points. He's doing really well so far. Used 3 transfers now, which is also like why I'm not such a huge fan of the transfers, because it's going to be very important to save as many transfers as possible now with a lot of things happening with double game weeks, chips coming into play, blank game weeks, double game weeks. There's going to be a lot of stuff to take into consideration going forward, basically. But yeah, Kimo was close to being manager of the week, but he was not manager of the week. That was none other than Gary Hendricks with 99 points using the Wildcard. And should take that into consideration as well, or note that it is the Wildcard used, and you can see from the chips remaining, no chips remaining, apart from the Ass Man chip, which is going to come into play in Gameweek 24. Hasn't had a chance to use that yet. But this manager used triple captain in Gameweek 1, Salah, who got 14 points, so that was a good use of triple captaincy, I guess. Then Gameweek 2, free hit, which was not the best free hit. I think it was like 69 points in a pretty high-scoring game week. I don't think that was the best. Then he actually used Wildcard in Gameweek 3, the first Wildcard in Gameweek 3. Then Gameweek 4, no chips, and then Gameweek 5, bench boost again. Which I think is the sign of like a new manager who just wants to like, oh, what is this? What does this button do? What do you do there? Gary Hendricks used all your chips, but the last one that you used, the last one before the assistant manager chip at least, was used really well because 99 points after using the wildcard. Picking this team is fantastic. Kirk is with 12 points and Boyan with 19 points, just like Kimo, but unlike Kimo, he brought in Raul, he brought in Raul on the wildcard with 13 points. You mentioned him. He was fantastic. Ula Aina with 6 points. Did bench Sells with the 9 points, but I get it when Aston Villa had Leicester at home. I get why you would go with Martinez in that instance, so I don't really begrudge that decision either. But team is looking good, obviously. It's the wildcard used, so should be a good team going forward. What do you think about the team? Like, what decisions do you think he got wrong in terms of the wildcard? And obviously, so far so good. It seems like he got most decisions right. But is there anything you would have done differently, or any like issues you see with the squad, or do you think this is like a nice squad to just have and save up transfers for the next few game weeks?
No, I think generally speaking, some of these players obviously have like difficult run of fixtures, and I think one of them is Bournemouth. So Karakesh is one of those decent moves in regards to their form. They're playing really well and all this type of stuff. So it'll be an easy stash going forward, considering the fact that he has other players, and including Hall and Mitchell, and especially with the 3-4 weeks that they're playing. Hall, for example, has awesome games, including 3 out of the 4 being home games. So I think in terms of spreading the wealth and stuff, it's clever. I don't know if Sells and Martinez was necessarily the most necessary to goalkeepers to have.
Efficient use of funds,
but in regards to everything else, I like Salah, I like Palmer, and Buemo against Southampton is always, like, it makes sense. I get why he has him. Aina is just the best fancy budget. Like, this is
he's the highest scoring defender this season.
Yeah, this guy should be my FP. My Lord Loughton, as I used to say back in the day, because he randomly got me 15 points when I transferred him in. I think generally speaking, Martinelli wasn't the worst pick because he has looked good in the absence of Saka, but Arsenal's attack has looked terrible in the absence of Saka as well. So it's one of those confusing ones. Like, but I blame Kai Havertz fully for the loss against United, for example.
Awful.
I mean, how many chances did he scuff? Odegaard, obviously, I've always said I don't like penalties and keeper height. Those are savable pens, and especially against a goalkeeper talent like him, who then ends up saving another penalty. So kudos to him. But Martinelli could be someone a bit different as well, because you're at that sort of price range where there are fun options there. I even like the look of Hwang, man. So if is he still listed as a midfielder this year?
Yeah.
Or is he a forward?
He's a midfielder.
So there's all types of little fun
Wangs.
No, I didn't realize that my watch really pinched my skin for like an hour or something, and I didn't realize. So I think there's a lot of midfielders in that sort of, what would Martinelli be? He's in like the 7th, early 7 point something, or has he gone down to like 6 point something because of being crap? Martinelli,
I think he's 6 point something actually. Like, I think he was pretty cheap from the start of the season, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so yeah, I kind of agree with you with Martinelli in terms of like he's like not the best in terms of how Arsenal are looking currently. But also wanted to ask you, like, he has doubled up with both Sells and Aina. like you touched on Aina and you said that he should be in your team. And to be fair, you did mention to me like back in like Gameweek 3, should I get Aina? And I was a bit unsure because I didn't know about the rotation stuff with Moreno coming in, Nico Williams and stuff playing there. So I was a bit like, I sort of talked you out of it, which is obviously been a huge mistake. And then in Gameweek 6, when I had a wildcard, you sort of talked me into getting Sanchez over Cell. So I should have had Cell since Gameweek 6. You should have had Aina since like Gameweek 3 or 4. But we don't have either. We haven't had a single Nottingham Forest defender all season, either of us basically. So what do you feel about the double up of Nottingham Forest? Do you think it's enough with just one? Or do you think it warrants having a double up now for the end of the season, or like, yeah, for the foreseeable future with Nottingham Forest defenders, considering how good they've been? Like, what do you feel about Nottingham Forest defense in the future this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nuno Espirito Santo has shown that it's not a fluke because they're doing it like back to back to fucking back, which is irritating me because in a lot of those games they could have easily conceded. But yeah, I think going forward, their chances are pretty meh, if I should be honest. Liverpool at home, Liverpool are not going to go away without scoring, in my opinion,
Yeah,
considering how they've been playing as of late. Southampton game, easy, cheddar,
clean
cheddar.
sheets. Yeah.
Charlie Armstrong, or whatever the fuck is his name? Stuart Armstrong? Adam Armstrong? What is that striker called that I used to like?
Adam
Something
Armstrong, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's Adam
Yeah.
Armstrong. He's going to score in the 20th minute just to piss everyone who has Nottingham Forest defenders off because that's so Southampton. But Bournemouth away, never an easy game. Brighton can be hit or miss because Brighton seem to be better away from home than at home. So that can be hit or miss. Fulham away, not the easiest game. Then Newcastle away, not the easiest game. Arsenal at home, not the easiest game. Man City at home, not the easiest. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of games where they could concede in almost every game. Then they meet Ipswich, probably concede to Delap there too. Then they'll play Man United at home, can go either way. Aston Villa away can go either way. Everton at home, they'll probably win,
Clean
but will
sheet.
still score.
Everton score? I don't know. Maybe under Moyes. Maybe a new time is coming.
Exactly. Then Brentford, then Crystal Palace, then Leicester, then West Ham, Chelsea. Like, I don't love it, to be honest.
So it seems like you're not completely sold on Forest defenders in general. Does that mean you would go without a Forest defender going forward, or do you think one is good?
I think the heavy reliance of both is unnecessary
Okay.
because this is sort of like when people were backing, no offense, but when people had double Arsenal defenders because of Timber or because of Raya and a combination of one of their defenders. It's you have to catch the wave correctly, and it sucks. You know, yeah, you're predicting that you are catching the wave, but unfortunately, some of these things are just down to form and injuries and all types of stuff that change the dynamic of their defense. And I think in case of Nottingham Forest, they've also just, if you think about the teams that they did keep clean sheets against, it's like, let's have a look here.
Wolves,
It's
Everton,
like,
Spurs, Brentford.
yeah,
Pretty
it's the
good.
fact that they beat Liverpool away, which was like the big whoa sort of thing, right? But yeah, it is in matches you would expect them to keep clean sheets. The only ones where you're like, wait a second, is maybe the Spurs one, and maybe
Brentford away is pretty impressive to keep a clean sheet.
yeah, sure,
They have a pretty
yeah,
good attacking team.
yeah, and to beat us 2-0 at home is
Clean sheet against
eh,
Everton is expected under Sean Dyche.
shut up.
Dyche ball. Come on.
Yeah, fine, but like these are sort of, and especially considering where Everton were, these were sort of expected clean sheets, right? Generally speaking,
Yeah, so
I feel
I'm still pretty
like
impressed.
yeah, of course. I mean, to be where they are and everything like that, of course, you know, of course, they deserve all the plaudits and stuff like that. It's just the question of whether they can keep it going.
Yeah.
Personally, don't believe that they will, because teams that are, you would say are better, Arsenal, for example, weren't able to. So, and they have even better quality defenders. So, I think I think the House of Cards will eventually fall, but it's okay.
But also, you're not the biggest fan of doubling up on defense in general, right? Like I've gotten that feeling from you in general.
Yes, correct.
So yeah, it sort of like makes sense for you not to be too fussed about like a pretty like surprisingly good defense so far, doubling up on them.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, I think you would agree as well. I think both Sels and Aina are good players, like by themselves as well. I like both are good options. But like you said, you have Martinez and Sels. Gary Hendricks could potentially downgrade Sels and just have Martinez. But I don't know. I think the defense is also kind of interesting. It's pretty balanced defense with Aina, Robinson, Kirkus, Hall, and Mitchell. Several teams, several good players as well. So could just bench Aina some weeks and just play Sels, and then in those really good game weeks where you have really good fixtures for Nottingham Forest, you can play both Aina and Sels. So yeah, I don't really mind the double up in terms of you can bench one of them, but doubling up with like two defenders where you don't have the option, like one goalkeeper, one defender, I think is better than having two defenders from the same team. So yeah, I don't mind it, and I think like they've had 9 clean sheets from 21 game weeks. That's super impressive, and they are just really solid defensively. Milenkovic, I remember 3, 4, 5 years ago now when West Ham were linked with both Kurt Zouma and Milenkovic, and you said to me like definitely go for Milenkovic. He's fantastic. He's going to be fantastic. He's going to be great. And yeah, West Ham went for Zouma. That was the wrong choice. West Ham have had like 7 defenders since that as well, and none of them have been as good as Milenkovic is. So Forest defense is legit. Like Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina, whoever they play at left back or right back, depending on where Aina plays. Sels has had a fantastic season as well. Like he had really many, like a lot of great saves, including last game. He got a bit lucky, but yeah, I think they're a really good defense, and I don't think double up is too bad, but I probably wouldn't double up myself either. So yeah, that's basically my conclusion, or both of our conclusions really, that we like them. One singular player, 2 maybe a bit too much, but it's not the worst either. So yeah. But anyways, that was the manager of the week and the score from this past game week. So now we're going to go more into the future. Like we have talked about some future stuff already, but let's look ahead in terms of the fixtures that we have going forward. And we have the fixture ticker, and for the first time this season, this is the first time we have a double game week, I think. We have a double game week in Gameweek 24, which is just announced today as we're recording this on the Monday. The match between Everton and Liverpool that was postponed because of the storm previously in the season, that has been set now to Gameweek 24. That's going to be a double game week for both Liverpool and Everton. Everton have home fixtures against Leicester at home, which is really nice, and Liverpool at home, while Liverpool have fixtures against Bournemouth away and Everton away, which is pretty interesting, especially for those with triple captain left, considering the form that Salah is in. I have Salah, I have triple captainship left. I'm most likely going to use it in Gameweek 24. But for those of you like you who has used their triple captaincy chip already, you did it successfully with Holland, 17 points in Gameweek 3 against Ipswich. Fantastic. Always back against Ipswich, which you usually say. For you have an opportunity now to use the triple or the assistant manager chip like we talked about at the start of the episode. So looking at these fixtures, mainly Everton or Liverpool, I think Slot has been like talked about as like a potential assistant manager chip manager, because obviously it's currently the best team in the Premier League. They keep a lot of clean sheets. They score the most goals. It seems like a pretty safe option. And now Bournemouth away, Everton away, Wolves at home, Man City away would be the 3 game weeks that you use it in. So what do you feel about using it on Arne Slot from Gameweek 24? Do you think that's good, or do you think like you want to chase the high upside of having like the bonus? Because obviously with Liverpool, you're not going to get the bonus of being 5 places below the team that they're facing. Do you think Slot is a viable option, or do you think you would rather use it on like a manager that is in charge of a weaker team that could get the extra bonus points from winning matches and stuff?
Obviously, I think Arne Slot seems like a sure thing, considering the form and everything. It does require you to then also have him as your assistant manager against City away, which could easily go against you if City decide to turn up and etc. But I think the matches that come with it are great. You know, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say Everton away isn't a fun fixture for Liverpool. Of course, we can turn things
Derby.
up. And
Who knows?
of course, all this type of things can happen, but considering the current form and everything like that, yeah, it seems very likely that we could get our asses kicked too. So, yeah, I think he's worth, especially like a manager like myself who's actually used all the things that they could have used for this upcoming double game week, including a bench boost and etc. I think it does work to use him or potentially like a Newcastle and stuff like that. But yeah, I think for that row of games, I could see myself doing Arne Slot myself. I don't have three Liverpool assets. I didn't go with Luis Diaz, so yeah, that's where I could see myself doing it. But getting the 1.5 to do it, that will be. It's a
Yeah.
question for a different time, I guess.
Yeah, he's one of the more expensive managers, obviously, because he has the best team, basically. But yeah, when it comes to the Man City game, I think it's an interesting game. I think it could be a high-scoring game because Man City are just not that good defensively, but really good offensively. So that could bode well because you get one extra point for each goal scored. So if that's like a 5-4 win for Liverpool, you get a lot of points. You get 5 points from the 5 goals that they score, and then you get the win bonus, all that stuff. Like that's the main thing for using slot is the fact that you are more secure in terms of getting the wins. Because if you select, for example, we're going to get to him now, David Moyes and Everton. If you select him and you lose 1 or 2-0 against Liverpool, that's 0 points. You don't get any points from that. You need to get a draw or a win for that to matter, basically.
Yeah.
So that's the safety you get with slot. But personally, I think all fixtures are like kind of tricky-ish potentially. I mean, Bournemouth away, it's not an easy fixture for anyone, basically. They've been really good, especially Iraola. We know Iraola from La Liga. Like, he got really good results against Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Atletico. Like, the big games, he knows how to handle those games, Iraola. So I think that's a tough match. Merseyside derby against Everton away, I think that's a tough match as well. It's not a given that they're going to win that game either, even though you would expect them to, because it is the current first place holders against like a relegation side currently. Wolves at home should be an easy fixture, but we've seen Wolves play Liverpool pretty tough in the past. Like it was like a 2-1 win earlier in the season as well. And Wolves are that type of team that can turn up against anyone, basically. But yeah, that's a good fixture, I think, of course, for Liverpool to win. And then Man City, who knows, Gameweek 26, maybe Man City will have made some signings. Marmoush is coming in, it seems like. That's going to be the Egyptian duel between Marmoush and Salah, it seems like. So that could be definitely a tough game away at the Etihad when City have some more time to get back into it, basically. So yeah, I'm not too confident about any of those matches. So I think just like the upside isn't high enough, and the downside could be pretty bad as well. Even though it is sort of safe, I guess, like they are going to win 2 out of those 4 games, most likely, at least. But yeah, I'm not just sure about any of those games in particular. So yeah, I would probably save it. I think in general, just saving the assistant managership is pretty smart thing to do. I think there's going to be a lot of good options in the last few game weeks of the season. I think this is like the strongest argument for saving the assistant managership for the last 3 game weeks is the fact that you get teams that are just like 12th place and have nothing to play for and are basically on the beach, as we say, and they could easily lose to the teams that are fighting relegation in like 17th, 18th spot, and then you get the bonus points from that and stuff. So I think saving it is better, but there is going to be some game weeks. There is going to be some way to sort it out. And also, this is also a thing that I haven't mentioned yet. The system managership, you can actually switch managers during the game weeks. So you could start off with Moyes in Game 24 against Leicester and Liverpool, and then before the Crystal Palace away game, which could potentially not even be a bonus game because Palace and Everton are pretty close in the table. You could switch to someone else. You could go with Arsenal against Leicester, for example, and hope that they score a lot of goals, or Aston Villa against Ipswich, hope that they score a lot of goals and get a huge win. Get some points that way. Maybe switch to, you can do Moyes against Leicester and Liverpool, hope that Everton get a draw against Liverpool and beat Leicester by quite a lot, and then switch over to Emery, for example, for Aston Villa's game against Ipswich, which could be a high-scoring game, and then against Chelsea, where they might get that bonus point thing as well, because they might be 5 places below Chelsea and still have a decent chance to beat them at home. So that is like a potential Game Week 24, 25, 26 outline, I think, for the assistant managership, but I would prefer to save it personally. But yeah, back to what we talked about earlier in the podcast, or at the start. David Moyes in game 24. Leicester at home, Liverpool at home. Do you think that's a decent chance for him in terms of getting potentially a draw in the final Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, and then potentially beating Leicester by quite a few goals? Like, do you think that's a decent game week to start using your assistant managership, or what do you feel about those two games for Everton?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as likely as it is for Liverpool to win both of their games in that same game week. So, yes, in the sense that I think us beating Leicester is the same as them beating Bournemouth, but I also think that we're able to get a scrappy draw against Liverpool by defending our butts off, reverting to dice ball, or actually playing a decent game where we just get a scrappy 1-0 win or 2-0 win, which would be amazing. So, is it within the realms of possibility? Yes, but is the one thing that's a million more expensive the sort of surefire option? Of course. So it just depends on what you want to do and whether you want to strategize in the sense of actually flipping it, for certain managers and stuff. Like if there's some like straightforward, like what an easy win, but table wise it might look a little bit askewed, then great. You could also swap it like that, going for
Man City, for example, Newcastle and Liverpool, those two might be 5 places above Man City in game 25 and 26.
Exactly. Yeah. That, for example, especially considering if Marmush comes and if Holland's looking as good and solid as he has been lately, the results will come. So definitely, it's definitely something that be taken into consideration. But if you want to go safe, then go with Liverpool, for sure.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. So I think this is a viable option to start with either Liverpool or Everton, depending on your risk aversion or how much you like doing risky things. You could do Moyes in game 24 or Liverpool in game 24, and then potentially switching to potentially either Aston Villa or Man City potentially in those 2 game weeks. Could be a good idea. And considering Man City's fixtures leading into that, Chelsea, Arsenal, that might lead them to go further down the table and actually get the bonus compared to Newcastle and Liverpool. So that could be a good option as well. So yeah, there are reasons to potentially use assistant managership in 24, 25, 26, especially if you've already used triple captain and bench boost, for example, like you have. Personally, I think waiting is the best option for now. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. But general thoughts, not just the double game week. Obviously, Liverpool have really good fixtures around the double game week as well. Everton, not so much. Some like meh fixtures. Most of them are like great. Aston Villa at home, Brighton away, Spurs at home even is like a fixture. Palace away, Man United at home. Leicester at home is obviously a really good fixture. So I think having at least one Everton player should be good for the double game week. But would you go for more than one Everton player at this point, or do you think just having like one defensive cover, for example, Mikolenko, is good, or do you think there's any like attacking players potentially you could have from Everton?
I think it's just one of those things where I'm grateful that we have a sample size, especially with a bunch of these new managers coming in as well. Graham Potter, David Moyes. We have the opportunity to see what sample size they can give us in the 2-3 weeks prior to the double game week, which I think is a massive thing. And for example, like if I know for a fact that Skilliman, if he's playing and taking penalties in every game, for example, he is Juan Pedro's replacement in terms of price as well, and could be someone cheap to have. And I'm quite grateful to see, because if Calvert-Lewin is all of a sudden embraced by the warm embrace of goddamn David Moyes, who's like, you're exactly what I wanted in Yakubu. So you never know, if Calvert-Lewin and some of these guys are back. Dwight McNeil, who's been a big reason to, I think, Dyche's downfall as of late, because we've lacked that creativity from him, and he's been playing brilliantly. Like, it's these sort of players. If we can see these guys getting incorporated quick enough, I would 100% recommend an additional player.
Yep.
But I feel like all of us have Mikolenko anyway, so you're good to go.
We do, but not that many other people have him actually.
Yeah. Because there's going to be people with Pickford, for example. Pickford
Pickford's
is always a
decent
nice
option.
pick, especially considering the fact that the boy can save pens. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think there are players to be considered, but I think it's kind of sucks that we didn't have easier games leading up to this. Because, like, imagine if, one of these teams.
I mean, Aston Villa and Spurs, you can actually get at them and get some
Yeah.
attacking returns there.
It could be a new manager bounce that we beat Aston Villa in the
Yeah,
first place. So
wouldn't put
if
it
we're
past you.
lucky, great. You know, if we can establish a pattern of winning or even just looking good in these three fixtures before this Gameweek 24, and then by all means, I think
Mm-hmm.
do it according
And
to that as well.
there's also a transfer window as well, and Everton have been linked with
Of
quite a few
course.
players. Like Philogen is
Yes.
not going to end up with Everton, but there's another player that was linked as well, some kind of winger or striker from Serie A, I think, or what was it? I think there's a player pretty heavily linked to. So there are going to be some signings, especially now with a new manager coming in, David Moyes. Mikel Antonio is sadly injured, so you can't buy him, but there are some potential options coming out from abroad as well. So yeah, that's also something you have to take into consideration for the double game week. Not only with Liverpool, with Everton, but with Liverpool as well. They could get some new signings that are good potentially. But yeah, I don't get the feeling that Liverpool will do that many signings in January. But Everton, for sure, you could easily get someone in. But yeah, like you mentioned, Ndiaye, I think Skilliman, like you called him. He could definitely be really, really good because you know how good he has been in the past, especially in the Championship with Sheffield United. And he's shown some signs of it as well. I just think he needs to be more involved in what Everton do offensively. And like you said, Calvert-Lewin, maybe David Moyes would unlock something.
That's who it was.
Who was it?
Ernest Nuama, the
Nuama, that's the
Lyon
one.
player.
Yeah.
He's pretty good, so I'd be very happy with him. We're also linked with Kyle Walker-Peters, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, he's good though. That's a good signing.
I would not suspect.
Really good signing.
I mean, I think he'd be perfect for exactly what we need, but I doubt Southampton will get rid of him until after the season. I don't think they'd get rid of him in January.
I mean, they're going down anyway, though. Like if they can get good money for him, like it's not like they need to keep him to stay up. They're just gonna go down.
It's pretty crazy. I find it hilarious that Godfrey went to Atalanta and now has been loaned to Ipswich Town, which obviously is a big middle finger to all Norwich fans. Sorry
that's true.
For that.
Think about that.
And also, it's quite hilarious that now Atalanta is apparently looking at Calvert-Lewin as a January transfer. So screw it. If you want all our cut weight players, then go for it.
Yeah.
Give us back Ademola Lookman on a free and we'll be happy.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin, it's interesting though. Like I think he's actually like sort of like a typical Moyes player. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. But I think most FPL managers are just sick and tired of Calvert-Lewin, me included. So I'm going nowhere near Calvert-Lewin. Even if he scores a hat trick in Gameweek 21, 22, and 23, I'm still not going to touch him, I think, because he's such an FPL troll. But yeah, when it comes to Liverpool, also have to speak about those players for the double game week and also good fixtures all around. I think we both agree that Salah and Trent are really good players to have. Trent, there are some question marks about him. Always going to be the links with Real Madrid and stuff. I don't think they're going to sell him in January. I don't think that's a possibility. I think they'd rather see him go for free in the summer rather than selling him for like 25 million or whatever Real Madrid tried to purchase him for now. So I think both Salah and Trent are good options, but as a third option, you could leave that spot open for Arne Slot as the assistant manager. I would go against that. You seemed a bit more positive about that. But apart from Arne Slot as assistant manager, that third Liverpool spot, are there any other Liverpool players that you would consider getting in these few game weeks here, other than Salah and Trent potentially? Like, who sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think Gakpo has definitely stood out with his play lately. I think if we can establish that Jota's playing every game, then obviously Jota is great. Luis Diaz, I think it's like very obvious players for them. It's Luis Diaz, who I kind of rate lower than Jota and Gakpo.
Yeah.
Obviously, because all of a sudden, if Chiesa becomes a thing as well, I think Chiesa is the best out of all those other players. So, it's one of those interesting things where I think you're fine going Arne Slot, Trent, and
Salah.
Arne Slot, Liverpool defender, and Salah. Because Salah is so optimum
Yeah,
everything. You're never going
Salah's
to
given.
captain a Liverpool player outside of Salah. So, you know, everyone who's secondary to him is exactly that, secondary. So I think you could have a little bit of freedom in terms of who you want to pick. But I think Gakpo has certainly impressed me with how he's playing. And if you look at his goals too, they're not easy tap ins or anything like that. It's always
Yeah.
like top bins, crazy long range sort of
Yeah,
goals.
it's just not
So
really what
he's
you want
looking
for
really good.
FPL because those aren't really
Yeah.
sustainable usually. But we know Kakpo and how good he is at finishing,
Yeah, of
so it's
course.
not really
Yeah.
an anomaly either that he scores those types of goals.
No, and he's an extreme form player as we've seen in the various World Cups and Euros and stuff like that. Like when he scores, it's always in successive games and stuff like that. So he
Yeah,
just needs to get that consistency, and they just need to deal with the fact that Darwin Nunez is not their
yeah,
striker
he's not.
at the end of the day.
He's not
He's
the
done
guy.
some brilliant things lately and looked good in like cup games and stuff like that, but he's not sustainable as their number nine because he's not even given the playtime for it.
Yeah, and Kakpo has been playing a lot lately. I think he started like 8 out of the last 9 games or something like that. So yeah, he keeps getting subbed
That's
off though, which is the downside to Liverpool and their many attackers. That's why Salah is such a huge option, but yeah, you mentioned quite a few Liverpool players there, but you didn't mention the guy that was one of your best players so far this FPL season. Who's back now, Ibrahima Konate. He is
of
5.1,
course, yeah,
really cheap
yeah, yeah.
defensive option there, who's been really good. He can score some goals as well. I think he's also a really good option to have. You could double up with the defense. Brentford away isn't the best fixture. Like Nottingham Forest away is decent for clean sheets. I think Brentford away probably a bit tougher when it comes to clean sheets because Brentford are a pretty good offensive side. Ipswich could be a clean sheet there. Bournemouth, they don't have a striker currently with both Nilsson and Isonal out injured for the long term. Everton haven't really scored that many goals this season as well. So yeah, I think you could double up with defense as well with Konate and Trent, or just have Konate rather than Trent, like you said, Liverpool defender and Salah. So yeah, I think there's quite a few options there. Personally, Salah is obviously a given. I think Trent is still a really viable option. And then potentially I would go with Konate just because I'm not sure about the forwards. Like you said, Chiesa, if he's back now healthy, he stays healthy, it could just be even more rotation if both him and Jota are back. And already you have Darwin Núñez and Gakpo as well. So yeah, I think just having Trent and Salah for now, and then potentially bringing in someone for the double game week is what I would do. Whether that's slot as a manager or if it's like a punt on Luis Diaz or Jota, or depends what happens in the next few game weeks basically. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the fixture ticker. Interesting to see that the two teams that are doing the best in terms of expected goals and expected goals conceded are the teams that have the best fixtures as well, in Liverpool and Newcastle. So those two teams are definitely players, or yeah, getting players from those two teams is definitely something you should look into, regardless of who's in your team. Crystal Palace as well, looking a bit more promising now under Glasner. They have some pretty good fixtures. That's a good team to target. Man United have looked a bit better under Amorim. It's also a decent team to target. Spurs, I don't know. What do you feel about Spurs and their assets in general? Like, they had a really disappointing season and they are pretty far down in the table as well. Could potentially be a good assistant managership later on in the season if they are climbing the table towards the end of the season. But what do you think about Spurs assets? Are there anyone that like is of any interest to you, or is Spurs just like a no-go for you currently in FPL?
Until Ange gets sacked, they're a bit of a no-go for me. Like I think
Mm.
Kulusevski has been pretty impressive. I think Solanke has been good in every other game or every other 3 games at his current rate. So like there are interesting players there. Pedro Porro, who I've always been a big fan of, and there are players there, but I think until the management changes, nothing's gonna change. Like I'm sorry, I might sound ridiculous in wanting Ange out when he's such an extremely likable character and stuff like that, but I think in terms of what Spurs' ambitions are and what they're capable of and their team, they're doing awfully. And I think a lot of it
Yeah.
has to do with Ange's pride. I think he's a bit too proud about changing his tactics and formations and all types of things. I think he's so stubborn that he has to play with the high line and stuff. Kamikaze football that works in some games and then completely misfires. There are
Yeah.
games that they should be winning
Especially with all the
that
injuries
they
that they
don't.
have defensively.
it's just games that they should be winning that then completely screws them over in the table. Like if you think about it, they're 12th. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty garbage considering the fact that they lost. Like look at their matches recently. They lost to Newcastle at home.
Yeah, fair enough.
They
Newcastle
drew
really bad.
Wolves at home.
That's pretty bad.
Lost to Nottingham Forest, fine, I
Yeah,
guess.
pretty tough.
And
Newcastle's
then
pretty
and
tough.
then they absolutely got trounced by Liverpool.
Yeah, 6-3. And then now they beat them in the cup all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Which is hilarious. But what was the last win that they had at home? Southampton is the last away game that they won, which everyone wins.
Yeah.
Their last home win was against Aston Villa. Like some of these games that we've
Big fan.
listed, some of these games we've listed are winnable games. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I understand Newcastle are in good form, but you got to do better at home. Wolves, you have to be winning that game.
Yeah. Definitely.
Even Everton won that game like 3-4-0. So
Yeah,
like,
4-0.
what the hell is your excuse
New manager
to draw
bounce,
against
I
them?
guess.
I guess, but yeah, I'm sorry. Like, Ange needs to sort stuff out. Either he has to stop being so incredibly stubborn and selfish with the tactics, or he has to leave because
Yeah.
it's not working. 12th is not good enough for Spurs.
I mean, Spurs, they sacked Mourinho right before the final where he was going to win his trophy. And Ange has promised in the second season, I always win trophies. So you can't sack him either before he's going to win his trophy, apparently. Let's see about that with Spurs. I don't really think so because they're not really a...
And what is it, League Cup and FA Cup that they have the chance of winning?
Yeah, I guess. And they're... Yeah, they're not in any domestic cups, right? Or are they? Are they in Europa
No,
League?
they're still in the Europa League.
They are, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So there is still a chance of him winning something
Yeah,
realistically.
maybe.
There is.
But it's Spurs. They're not a trophy winning side. They're not like West Ham that can win the UECL. So, yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Spurs. But anyways, that is the fixture ticker. Not really too much to talk about that. Talk about interest of that anymore. So let's move on to the weekly Wildcard draft, which I haven't made a video on yet so far. So I want to discuss it with you. This is my current draft as it stands. I was sort of tinkering with this with the double game week confirmation and stuff. I made some changes to the team, but I figured we should go through each like set of players: goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and forwards, and just talk about like the best options and what you think about the players that I've selected. So let's start with the boring part first, I guess, with the goalkeepers. I go with Sels and Fabianski. Do you think you could potentially go with a different starting goalkeeper than Sels, or do you think he's a good option? You can see he's the number 13th pick for me, so I'm not entirely confident with him. But I think like just having a Nottingham Forest defender, I know what I did wrong in Game 6 by not selecting Sels, so I figured I should just select him now. But are there any other standout goalkeepers for you? Anyone that stands out immediately?
Dubravka, no, but I think one of those scenarios is Sals gets lots of saves. That's why he gets a lot of bonus too. So not the worst pick by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that they have some.
Yeah, I
Tough
mean,
game.
Fabianski covers him this week with Fulham at home rather than Liverpool. He has a really tough stretch, like 26, 27, 28, I think, where Fabianski has like not the best fixtures either. So, yeah, I did think about Pickford actually, because Pickford has, because you have to also keep in mind, because this is a wildcard draft, so this is assuming you have used your wildcard and you're not able to use your wildcard in Game Week 30, because for me and you, most likely we're going to save the wildcard until like Game Week 30. So that's going to be an out. So we sort of have to look at it in a different way, where we have a certain squad until Game Week 29, and then we wildcard in Game Week 30. But if you're wildcarding now, you can use your wildcard in Game Week 30 because you would have used it already. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So I think Sals is just, I picked him just because I think for like the entirety of the season, he's the goalkeeper I trust, I guess. But he is kind of expensive now as well compared to when I was potentially buying him in Game Week 6. Now he's actually like 5.0 or 5.1 even. So yeah, I could see reasons to go with someone else. But yeah, any other goalkeeper that sticks out to you? Like anyone, Pickford, I see someone potentially with a double game week, some iffy-ish fixtures coming up, but Fabianski can
Yeah,
cover him a bit.
I think generally speaking,
Alisson, is he a decent option?
he's a bit expensive, right?
Yeah.
You might as well just get Konate for the same price.
Yeah.
I think the issue with goalkeepers right now, just defenders in general, is it's so hit or miss with clean sheets.
Yeah.
It's either a week where everyone gets it, or it's a week where everyone concedes. It's not been. It's the only thing that's been consistent is actually Wolves, or sorry, Wolves, Forest and Cells in general. So it's it's a bit tough. I don't hate this. I think this is seems like the seems like a decent pick. The only thing that I'm a bit iffy about is Anderson. He's been dog shit since he's come to Fulham. He's been a really
Well, yeah. So okay,
great.
let's go to the defenders because we've passed the goalkeepers now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through the thinking of each player as well quickly. Holm and Munoz, I think they're playing. They have really good matches. They're both really attacking, and I think they have really good attacking potential. And two promising teams as well, looking better and better. Trent, the double game week is basically the main selling point here. Also, Trent is fantastic if he starts every game, which I assume he will do. Mikolenko, basically the double game week and the cheap price. He's 4.3, has the double game week, and he's like a really nice utility player. I've had him the whole season basically, and he's been really good as someone you can just swap in when you need someone to play. And then you did address Anderson, and I don't really agree. I think he looked really good, and Fulham looked really good at the start of the season after he came in. Then he got injured. He's been like a bit in and out with injuries and stuff. But I've actually been pretty impressed with Fulham with Anderson there, especially when they haven't used Issa Diop, who's like the worst defender, and one of the worst defenders in the league, in my opinion, as a former West Ham player, I know. And like, this is obviously the spot where you could go with Robinson. He is a bit more expensive, obviously. He's like 0.7 more, so I could see the argument for that, but I just wanted to have like a cheap defender because I quite like Hall, Munoz, and Trent to play most games anyway. And then most people would say, just go with Castagna instead. He's like the wing back. He plays further forward and stuff. The thinking there is, like I said, we have to take into consideration this is the wildcard draft. You don't get to wildcard in Game Week 30. And by Game Week 30, Kenny Tete will be back and Castagna will be out of the team. And Anderson will still play at that point. So I think it just saves the transfer for the future to have Anderson rather than Castagna. But you could persuade me to go with Robinson because he's a fantastic player. It's just for me that I have so many players that I want to play every single game week that I don't really... He's mostly for the bench, just like a cheap player off the bench. 4.2 for Fulham, who's a pretty good defense. That's the thinking with Anderson. But obviously, he's number 12 pick. Not too confident in him, but that's like the main reasoning there. So with all that in mind, what do you think of the defense? Any players that you think I'm missing? Anyone that you think I should consider? I don't have Gabriel. He's dropped out since last time. It was a pretty harsh thing to do, but I sort of did it after Trent proved himself again. So yeah, Gabriel, I don't feel good about leaving him out. And Konate is the other one that I mentioned on the cusp because, yeah, he's just a cheaper option than Trent. That's where you can get Konate for Trent, and then you can upgrade Anderson to Robinson, for example, because Robinson is a really good player with interest of bonus, assist points as well. He is probably worth the price rise from Anderson, I guess. But yeah, any other defenders you think I should mention? Any other like players that I might have missed in defense?
I think generally speaking, that is as good of a defense that you get. Arsenal defense obviously is the one thing you might have wanted. Obviously, getting rid of Rick Lewis, the legend, well done.
Yeah, terrible player. Good riddance.
City have just been so dog shit, so fair enough. I mean, I think I still technically have him, which is bonkers to me. So yeah, I think I can't really hate on defenders, also because defenders have been so hit and miss. We all get rid of Ait Nouri, and all of a sudden Ait Nouri is back into the sort of player that we expected him to be. And Buemo was blanking left and right, and then all of a sudden scoring in pretty difficult matches and stuff. So, well, obviously Southampton wasn't difficult, but like the goal against Arsenal, which was, again, Arsenal should have probably
dealt with
like
that.
Raya should have saved that. So I think generally speaking, like, it's obviously a player from a bunch of teams rather than doubling up, which I'm always going to be a big fan of. And you've targeted defenders and teams that have good fixtures as well, so I can't really fault it. The only thing that I would have said is Castano over Anderson, but I like your thinking that long term, Anderson is probably going to be they're starting two center backs or even three center backs if they keep this 3-5-2 thing going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's fine. And eventually he'll come good because he used to be a good goal scoring threat too, and
Yeah.
when he was at Crystal Palace. So, yeah, you know, it's not the worst pick. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think the only thing that maybe you would put into consideration is Gabriel, who's gone back
Yeah.
into like good form in terms of scoring as well. And
Yeah.
that's why we always picked him over Saliba. But it's Arsenal are so
It's just
there's
like,
such a lesser side without Saka as well.
yeah, it's just like if I pick Gabriel, it wouldn't be for one of the cheaper ones because I think that would just be a too stacked of a defense, basically. So it would be for either Hall, Munoz, or Trent. And I feel like you need to have another Liverpool player already. If you're wildcarding now, you want to have two Liverpool players for that double game week already. So I picked Trent over Gabriel, and then you could pick Gabriel over Munoz, I guess, but he's way more expensive, and the fixtures aren't as good. Munoz is just looking really enticing currently, in my opinion. So yeah, just had to leave him out, but I don't feel good about it at all. But moving on to the midfield, Salah, Palmer, don't really have to justify those two guys. They've been really amazing this whole season. Maybe have something against Palmer or something. I don't think so, but if so, you can speak up later. Gordon, the great fixtures, the great form, everything. He's number 4 in my rankings because I think he's just a really good option to have currently. He's like, I would say in general to just save your transfers currently and just stick with what you have. But Gordon is one of those players that is actually really interesting to me, regardless of how good your midfield is, basically, because yeah, he's just looking really good currently. Bruno Fernandes, I think, is a really good option. He is on penalties. He's been a lot more offensively minded, or like under Amorim, he's actually been, if you look back like the last like 10 to 12 game weeks, he is one of the highest scorers. And with the good fixtures, 4 or 3 out of the next 4 are home games. Southampton at home this week. I think it just makes sense as a pick. And then Rodgers, he is just like my favorite guy, as you know, from this season. I've had him this whole season. There are some strong contenders there. Amad Diallo obviously is cheap. Ismail Assar, who I had the previous week, is also a really good option that I like. I think even Enzo Fernandez hasn't really gotten much points lately. Now that Romeo Lavia is back with the Chelsea team, I think he's still going to be a good option. So he's also still good. I think whichever like cheap midfielder you have, I think you should just stick with them because I think they have some good upside. But I just prefer Rodgers basically because I'm a huge fanboy of Rodgers in general. But yeah, and Mbeumo is still the one that was like pretty harsh for me to leave out. I know we feel a bit differently about his fixtures, I guess, because I think he's going to have a really high scoring game week now against Man City because Man City are just really bad defensively and Brentford are really good offensively. But yeah, the bad fixtures, Fernandes around the same price with better fixtures and just like a more secure player. I went with him instead, but yeah, I think Mbeumo's also a pretty good option. That's why I have him on the cusp, basically. But yeah, what do you think about the midfielders? Anyone you would get rid of? Anyone, like, do you agree that Salah, Palmer, and Gordon are like nailed? Do you think Bruno is good? Like, what do you think about midfielders? Any other midfielders that I might lack?
I think considering I have 4 of the 5 mentioned players, like obviously I agree. So
Yeah.
I think they're pretty nailed on. I think Bruno Fernandes is gonna like, you know, I'm reading so much bullshit like Graham Souness being like, oh, he's a liability to the team. Yes, do I think Bruno Fernandes is a whiny little bitch? Yes, but is he a whiny little bitch who backs it up? I personally think so,
Yes.
considering some of the haul potentials that he has and the just player ability that he's capable of. Like people seem to forget, like, you know, people are like, oh, Bruno Fernandes is so reliable on penalties and X, Y, and Z, but like, are who's to say that Cole Palmer isn't that and all this type of stuff? Like people got these crazy number of goals and stuff because they're able to take set pieces, penalties and whatnot. So I don't think Bruno should be the sole purpose behind all the criticism behind
He
Man
was
United
so
right now.
good against Liverpool as well. Like he was man of the match.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, there's a reason why he got bonus points despite only getting assists. And
Yeah.
normally that doesn't happen because that means he had a good game. And I think that's my biggest gripe with Man United, just generally speaking, that they're not getting the best out of their catalyst. We've seen it happen before. Pogba was their facilitator and then completely got ripped into CDM. Bruno, when Casemiro just all of a sudden decided to retire, just ended up taking the CDM position and stuff like that. I understand it's been taking a little bit of time with Amarim gelling with the team, finding out which striker to use. Is it Xerxes? Is it Højlund? Or is it someone who doesn't come to training anymore? And Rashford, who might be going to Barcelona, and I don't want that. But
I want that.
Okay.
At West Ham. Rashford. I think Rashford's going to become good again. I think he's going to have like a
of course,
really nice.
But I think that.
Back. But regardless, Rashford is not what we're talking about here. He's not FPL relevant until he goes to West Ham.
My issue with Man United is that they're still trying to find themselves because they're so obviously talented. They're so obviously got a good coach in Amarim. They have a good squad. If January goes like Amarim go nuts, then it's going to get even better, especially if he gets to. I don't think he'll be able to get Gyökeres this season, but like if he picks out some of his sporting boys and, some good talents here and there, Lenny Yoro's back. De Ligt is a little bit hit and miss, but things are starting to gel a little bit. And I think the main person for that is Bruno Fernandes. If you ever expect anything out of a Amarim side, it's going to be him because he doesn't have his star striker to be delivering the goods. Who else can deliver the goods besides the star striker? It's going to be the star player, which is Bruno Fernandes to me.
My one question with Fernandes though as well, which is what I was thinking about. Fernandes versus Amad Diallo. Diallo is like 3 million less than Fernandes. Do you think it's worth it to have Fernandes for the price rise, or do you think Amad is just a better pick? Yeah?
Yes, I do. Because people forget that Diallo blanked for so many games as well. I think Diallo is a good pick. I even think if you're planning on doing a cheeky little double up, because
can do that.
You have, let's say for example, instead of Rodgers or something like that, I think Diallo is easy. Stash him in a game where you think it's gonna go straight to hell for Man United, but in a game where it's all systems go, he's definitely worth it. I think Diallo is a good player, but obviously Bruno Fernandes is a great player.
Yeah,
it takes all the set pieces, all the penalties.
Also, Diallo is also a slight doubt for the Southampton game, which is obviously the huge game that you want Man United players for. So that's also why Fernandes for me, like you said, I think the double up is more viable than going with Amad rather than Bruno. So and then Rodgers could go Ismail Sarr. I was really close to picking Sarr as well, but since I have Mateta already in this team, which we'll get to soon, I just went with Rodgers instead, just to have some diversity, I guess, in terms of teams and stuff like that, and in terms of other things. But yeah, so that's the midfield. Let's move on to the strikers, which is sort of like the most interesting position for me, because there are so many equal-ish, decent-ish options, I guess. But yeah, first let's go through the 3 players that I have selected. Somewhat controversial, I guess. Isak is not controversial. He's just a simple pick. He's the second pick in this wildcard draft as well. Other than Salah, I think he's the most important player to have in FPL currently, because he's fantastic. The fixtures are absolutely amazing. Mateta I go with rather than Wood, which is, I guess, the intriguing part here. But Mateta, he showed last season as well. Started the season off meh, and then he just exploded, became R9 basically in Gameweek 34 especially. He was just absolutely amazing. And yeah, I think they've shown some signs. He's getting some chances, and I think he could sort of have a similar resurgence this season as he had last season. So I think with just the fixtures as well, I think he's just a better option than Wood. So I selected him in the end. And then Joao Pedro, that's basically just because I don't really have much money in the bank. And I think he is a good option as well. He's proven now with the penalties. He scored a penalty against Arsenal, had 2 lucky assists, but that's what he gets from being an attacking player. Also, Welbeck is back into the side, so I think he's going to play more as the number 10, which I think suits him better. It's a couple of games ago, he was a mainstay. He's someone that you should have, everyone should have Joao Pedro in their team. And then he blanked for a couple of game weeks, and then now he's sort of out of it. So yeah, Wood is obviously the one that I left out. There's so many options. Nicholas Jackson, we talked about, Solanke, Raul Jimenez, Wissa. There's countless players that are about the same level. So where do you end up in terms of strikers? Which 3 strikers do you think are the preferred trio that you could have currently if you were to choose? And obviously Haaland, could mention him as well, but with Salah, Palmer, Isak, Fernandes, Trent, it's just not enough money in the bank to have Haaland. But yeah, what do you think about the 3 best strikers currently, in your opinion, to have in
I mean,
a squad?
I think the 3 to have is Wood, Isak, and potentially Acuna, while Pedro, depending on needs, wants, and haves in
Yeah,
regards
Cunha
to
as
who you
well.
have in your team. I think Mateta has really nice upside in terms of Crystal Palace look like they've turned a new leaf. I think Juan Pedro is always Juan Pedro. He looks much better with Welbeck, and Brighton, for whatever reason, don't need Ferguson, who should come to Everton on a loan and then
West Ham,
a
yeah.
transfer fee. Sure.
Re-
So,
Reunite him with Potter, West Ham.
yeah. Anyways, I think that is as good as it gets. The only issue is now that Juan Pedro might be injured, right?
Yeah, he had a scan, but he said like scan was good and stuff. So I think maybe the Ipswich game, which is like the main, like one of the main games you want him for, yeah, that could maybe like make it go a different way. But like I said, like this team doesn't have too much money in the bank. You could downgrade Trent to Konate and get that money to upgrade Joe Pedro. You could go with Raul Jimenez, like you mentioned. You said him earlier. Is he potentially someone you would pick?
Yes.
Yeah. So you think
Yeah.
Isak Wood and Jimenez? Or
I mean, considering the fact that
Raul,
yeah,
Isak, no, yeah, it was Wood, yeah, whatever. Yeah, do you think that's the main trio potentially?
I think it's them. I think it's them. I think it's potentially Mateta as well.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that Jackson deserves to be there because
Yeah.
he is like 8 million.
He was in the last draft.
Way more
GW20.
expensive. So yeah. So I think there's a bunch of these strikers who are in similar positions because they're meant to be considered the lesser of Erling Haaland, but currently aren't because they're delivering to a pace that justifies the price as well as Haaland isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
yeah, I think in terms of the 3 that you picked, they're perfectly fine. It's just the question of whether Juan Pedro is ready or not going forward.
Yeah.
Because it's the same shit with the pictures of crutches in the back, and we all had to be like, "Yep, he's dead." He's gone for a bit.
Yeah.
It's tough to say, but I think in terms of like, is he a plug and play for this game week? Hell yeah, it's Ipswich.
Yeah, if he's back fit to play,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So I think like most people aren't wildcarding. I think most people would be like smart to save their wildcard as well for, I think, Gameweek 30 around there, or potentially Gameweek 35 if you want to do a different tactic. I think that's a good idea because for the doubles and blanks, the wildcard and the free hit chips are really important to have, and you have both of those chips as well still. So you have the main chips left for that. So I think wildcarding now is not really the best. If you're wildcarding currently, this is the team I would select in terms of the long term. But I think you're better off saving it. And I think, like, just in regards to people that are not wildcarding and looking at their strikers currently, I think our suggestion is just like there are a lot of good options, but there are not really, apart from Isak, there's not really any like standout super good options. So stick to what you have, I think is my advice. Like I have Isak, Cunha, and Joao Pedro currently. And honestly, I don't really look to change that up because I don't think there's any like major upgrades I can do in that department. Like there are some good players. Like I think ideally Mateta would be in my squad. Raul Jimenez is someone that I would consider for sure. Wood is definitely good. He's been so consistent. Solanke has had like a pretty good couple game weeks now in terms of how he's looked as a player as well. Wissa is always good for Brentford. Like there's so many good options, but I think just like stick with what you have is as my general outlook on the strikers, basically. But yeah, this is basically the squad that I ended up choosing for this week. And next week, well, not for I will actually have a weekly wildcard draft for Gameweek 22 as well, because that's the deadline for that is Saturday. So I'm gonna get a video up for Thursday for that, and then I'll have another one next week. But anyways, that's the weekly wildcard draft for this game week. You're shaking your head for some reason.
Not FPL related, but Kucha Kvaratskhelia to PSG. It's just a matter of time. 70 million.
Such a waste.
70 million euros fee plus bonus, contract until 2029. What a waste of time and effort for everyone.
What a waste of Dembele as well. Another player that could push him out. But yeah. Anyways, let's get back to FPL and your current plans, because that's the next thing we have to talk about, basically. Kevin's Gameweek21 plans. You have a decent team. Again, the strikers, both Isak and Joe Pedro, some slight doubts there with both of them, but you do have Chris Wood ready to come in against Liverpool. Not the best fixture, but still decent player to have. You have some like starting decisions to do between your goalkeepers, for example, Henderson and Verbruggen. Defenders, I think Robinson is the best starter out of the three. Him, Mikolenko, and Lewis. I think Trent and Hall you need to start. But anyways, it's your team. Your decisions. You have one free transfer, 0.9 in the bank. Are you looking to do any transfers, or are you pretty happy with the team that you have currently?
Pretty happy with the team that I have. I think it's just a question of finding out who's starting and stuff like that. Because if Isak is for sure starting, I think I might captain him over Salah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of. This is maybe the 1 week where I have a lot of options over Salah in regards to that, because even Gordon potentially has like.
I mean, if Isak doesn't play, Gordon is probably going to be on penalties. He's going to play as a striker potentially.
Yeah, because
not sure if that helps him
out again.
Huh?
Of course not.
Yeah, Wilson's out injured. Yeah.
So yeah, Southampton at home for Bruno Fernandes. I mean, I've had that.
Decent.
I've seen him do bits against them in the past. So
backing in Salah though, he's blanked.
Yeah, of course.
He's blanked in 2 out of 20 game weeks so far. He's such a safe option.
It's just a question of, despite him not blanking, he's still been outscored by players, and I mean, quite literally, Palmer got the bonus 3, which Salah did it for whatever reason. So yeah.
Isak outscored him as well past 3 game weeks, or past game week it was equal, but prior to that,
Erling Haaland technically outscored him.
Yeah,
so
last game week.
There are options, and if we're meant to believe that the Cells and the Aina are the best in the world, then okay. If that's if we're going with that belief, I have players with better fixtures,
and
all
also
playing at home.
Liverpool have shown some signs of weakness as well lately. Like they didn't look at their best against Man United, and they lost against Spurs in the cup. So who knows?
Yeah, and they also destroyed sadly or whatever random ass team that they played, because they lost in the League Cup, but they didn't lose in the FA Cup.
Yeah, they won in the FA Cup, but that was like a lower league team.
Trent booster. So of course, I think backing Salah against Nottingham Forest away. I've seen what he did last year when we did that, and I don't actually remember if they lost that game or not. But I feel like it was some like random someone scored or something. I have to look that up. But generally speaking, I think this is awesome that I have so many players playing at home, and there's a lot of nice players to pick from. Just kind of feels weird to have to bench Chris Wood. So that will be played into consideration. If I believe that Salah and the lot is going to kick their ass, especially Salah, who I believed was completely rusted against whatever bullshit team that they played. Yeah, we're good to go. So, you got the rest in, all this type of stuff. But I am very heavily considering Isak as captain.
Yeah. I mean,
it feels like such a Isak game.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough as well. He's been in tremendous form, and if he's fit to play, or we assume he's going to be fit to play, then that's a good fixture. But Wolves also, they have gotten a new manager. They've looked a bit better under the new manager, but Newcastle are in terrific form, and Isak is in fantastic form as well. So I get it. But for me, I'm just going to stick with Salah myself, because I've tried to do select Palmer in this game week and Salah this game week. Hasn't really worked out for me, and I think Salah has just been so consistent ever since he joined Liverpool. So for me, I'm going to go with Salah, but I don't really begrudge anyone going with someone else, like Isak, for example, especially. So I think that's a good thing as well. But let's move on to Kimo's plans, and I've done a bit of a move here just to prove a point in terms of captaincy. I don't really say that he should captain this player, but I've captained Mbeumo for Kimo just to make a point that I think Man City at home is a really nice game. I think Mbeumo is a really nice option. If you want to be super frisky, captain him, but not really go with Salah or Isak as captain. But yeah, let's take that discussion now, because we've been a bit opposed on that issue. Like Man City at home for Brentford. What do you think of this game? Like, what do you think it's going to be a good chance for Mbeumo, or do you think it's going to be just Man City being the better team, as they have been in the past at least? Like Brentford have given them troubles in the past. Like 2 seasons ago, they beat them twice. But yeah, what do you think about Mbeumo and this fixture, basically, as my light is going
I think
out?
you also have to take into consideration that considering the sort of struggles that City have had, they're 3 games or even 4 games in all comps undefeated.
Yeah,
They're
against
looking,
against
yeah,
who?
fine.
Salford, West Ham, Leicester.
Leicester, and Everton. Sure, but these are the games that you need to be getting your form back in. So,
Yeah,
who's to say that, Brentford aren't amazing? They're not bad, but they've been pretty middle of the road, right?
yeah.
Wouldn't you say, or what would you say? Do you think that they've been
At home, they've been
absolute?
fantastic,
Yeah, sure,
and
they have
offensively,
been,
they're
but
fantastic.
yeah,
And Mbeumo and Lisa.
and they're technically above. They're what? Um,
For me, it's just Man City.
they're
Like they've shown
11th
so many
or
weaknesses. I think, especially, I could easily see Man City winning this game, but I think they will win the game like 4-3 rather than winning 1-0 or 2-0.
maybe,
Because against
sure.
West Ham and Leicester, both West Ham and Leicester had several chances to score against Man City, which is kind of crazy to say,
Yeah,
considering how bad Leicester and West Ham have been. Even Everton had some good chances and got a draw from that game as well. Like I've
surprise.
just not been impressed by City defensively at all this season, and yeah, Kyle Walker is gonna leave now finally because he's been a bit of a the opposite of bright spot, like a terrible player for them this season.
Yeah,
John Stones is always injured. They lack Rodri obviously, which is a huge miss for them. So yeah, I think this is like a really good game week for Mbeumo, and I think especially like if you have him, I would keep him for this game for sure. After that, potentially sell him, but yeah, I would keep him for this game week. So yeah, I just made a point out of it to put him as captain for Kimo. I haven't asked Kimo even what his captain is going to be. I don't suspect it's going to be Mbeumo, but I just wanted to make that point. That I think is still a really good option this week. But in general, other than that, looking at Kimo's team, anything you would change? Would you do any transfers? He has 0.0 in the bank and 1 free transfer, so it doesn't really have much flexibility in terms of transfers. But anything you would potentially do? I mean, the one weak side, I guess, is Kirkus away to Chelsea. Seems like a tough game. Would you start Mikolenko against Aston Villa instead potentially, or would you do a transfer there somehow? Like, what do you think you would do in Kimo's place?
I just hate the Bednarik move.
Yeah,
I think that could have easily have been another spot for a different defender. Like, how much is Bednarik?
he's the cheapest. I think that's why I selected him. I think it's like 4.0, so I don't think there's that many options for that price
Okay,
bracket. And I think that's basically why I picked him, just like a defender that plays most games or all games or whatever for a cheap
sure.
price. Yeah, he's 4.0, so you can get like Woutfash, you can get
Lovely.
uh, Greaves, you can get Scarles at West Ham, who's playing now at left back. In the absence of
Who?
Emerson,
No, I'm just kidding.
in
Uh,
the absence of Emerson, who's on his way back as well. So yeah, there's not really many options there, but yeah, he did that to fit in Watkins basically, who has Everton
Watkins,
away.
yeah, which might have been a bit of an overkill. Like,
Yeah,
I think, I think there's no point in playing Mikolenko if your belief is that hard on Rogers
yeah,
and
Rogers and Watkins. Yeah,
Watkins.
that's right.
Yeah. So, and if Bournemouth and Chelsea play out a game that you expect it to be, it's going to end up like a high scoring draw sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like, I could see
I mean, last time I
that.
think it was 1-0 to Chelsea, which was like
Yeah.
really unfair as well because Bournemouth were just a better
Yeah.
team there. But that's Bournemouth though; they created a lot of chances and missed them all. So yeah, I think that's an interesting game, and I think Kirk is like he's been so good for Kimo, so it might as well just start him. Could get attacking returns, could get defensive returns. You never know. Chelsea have been in a bit of a bad run of games as well. Like they haven't been looking the best lately, so I don't really mind that. That's why I've said like just stand pat, don't do any transfers, even though your defense isn't the best. You don't really
Mhm.
have much flexibility either, Kimo. So yeah, we just do that as well. And then the goalkeeper thing as well. Fabianski against Fulham at home, Sells against Liverpool at home. Just back to better fixture, or do you think back to better goalkeeper or team in this case?
I think in this scenario,
Sells
kind
could
of
get some
works.
saves, I guess. He did get a clean
Yeah.
sheet at Anfield.
But if you're also doubled up on Liverpool attacks,
Yeah, again, that's the thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think this will sadly have to do, or like unless Fabianski is like dead certain to not start over Areola or some random
I think
reason.
Areola is a slight doubt with injury, and Fabianski has just been way better than Areola this season. If you look at the expected goals avoided or whatever thing, Areola is like bottom of the league, and Fabianski is like top of the league almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a knockout in terms of those two guys currently.
Yep. So I think it's perfectly fine. I also don't think it's the worst decision in the world to maybe make a transfer defensively if there's something that you can fix, like in terms of going forward, because like Kirkis doesn't have the best games
Yeah,
going
he has some
forward,
tough
right?
fixtures. You could sell Kirkus
Yeah.
for Hall, for example. Like that could be an
Yeah.
option,
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
or Munoz as well is a decent option. So
Yeah.
I think those are potential transfers you can do. But I think also in general, my advice, which I'm going to say so many times throughout the videos these next weeks, is just save your transfers for like double game weeks, all the stuff
Yeah.
that's happening and stuff. But yeah, Kirkus, you could sell him for those guys. I agree that is a potential option. I'm not sure actually. Kirkus might be in terms of, since he bought Kirkus quite early and has gotten some price rises there, he might not have enough money to bring in Munoz or Hall, maybe. But yeah, if that's an option, then maybe. But 0.0 in the bank makes it a bit more difficult. So I think I actually looked into that, and I think he can't afford either of those two players potentially. But yeah, the other one is Luis Diaz, I guess. Nottingham Forest away. Could go away from him, but I think with the double game week coming up, and you have a Liverpool player already, don't transfer out a player that is going to have a double game week pretty soon, especially Luis Diaz, who's going to play at least one of those games. He's going to play like 60, 70 minutes plus, and he's going to be featured in both of them as well. So I think just keep him for now, in my opinion. Though, interestingly enough, like the one player that I would potentially look to sell is actually Watkins, who he just brought in for Nicholas Jackson last week. Like I think if it wasn't for that, like doing Watkins to Jackson wouldn't have been the worst move this week if I didn't have that in mind, or someone else like a cheaper player. But yeah, you expect him to start, I guess, against Everton, even though Duran is back. I don't know. He has been good in the past, and who knows? Maybe Moyes wants to play attacking football, and that will leave some space for Aston Villa to score and Rodgers and Watkins to get a lot of points. Who knows? Like Watkins is tough to predict sometimes. So yeah, I think it's fair enough to just keep him for sure, especially considering he just brought him in. But yeah, I wouldn't have done that retroactively in Gaming 20, what Kimo did basically. But yeah, that's Kimo's team. We are running pretty long interest of time, so let's just go to the manager of the week as well. And again, recently used the wildcard, 1.4 in the bank, one free transfer, but again, I think it's just saving the transfer here. A pretty strong team in general, a bit stronger than Kimo's even. Martinez against Everton, which is I think is fine. Mitchell against Leicester, which I think is good. Martinelli against Spurs. Spurs concede so many goals, and you can see that on the counter with Martinelli. He could definitely score. He had that one-on-one chance last game as well that he should have scored. So in the Premier League, so I think he's good. And Mbeumo, like I mentioned, I think he's a really good option still. Gordon is there, he's fantastic. Raul Jimenez against West Ham, that's really good. So yeah, I think it's pretty easy and straightforward with this team, and especially considering the manager has already used all chips available. Don't have wildcard, don't have free hit. You need to save up transfers. You need to have flexibility for those blanks and doubles eventually. So whenever you have a game week like this where you have 11 starters that look pretty good, don't do any transfers and just stick with it, is my general advice to this manager. But yeah, any thoughts about Gary Hendricks and this team going forward?
No, I think it's reasonable advice. I think in terms of starting and benching, pretty spot on. It's just a question of maybe Wood versus Martinelli, but considering the vulnerabilities of Spurs that you mentioned, it seems like the right move to give Martinelli another try. Um, I think you should just save transfers as well because doesn't seem to be any valid point in going for more. Like you did exceptionally well last week. Well, decent wild card for that 1 week, but because that's the thing that people seem to forget. Like the wild card isn't just for that week; it's long term.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of long term moves and etc. I mean, it's looking like a good team. There's just one or two oddball picks in terms of that, but I like the look of the team, and I think
Mm.
this is as optimal as it gets. So just stand pat, have a play around with who you want to captain. If you really want to listen to Matthias, you triple captain, which you don't have, Buemo on against City. So
Yeah, for sure. No, but I think that the other thing that I didn't mention about this team that is going to be a bit of an issue in a couple game weeks time is just the fact that we just got the news, Game Week 24 already, double game week, Liverpool and Everton, and here there's only one Liverpool or Everton player in Salah, who everyone has. So yeah, the likes of Mikolenko, potentially Trent or Konate, potentially some attacking players as well. Maybe you could, I don't know. Let's see what happens with those teams. But that's another reason why you should save transfers, so you can bring in some Everton players for Game 24, for example, or potentially bring in some Liverpool players before that. And like we said previously as well, the goalkeeper situation, Martinez and Sels, could potentially address that. Maybe, I don't know. Ideally, you would go to just like a cheaper goalkeeper to just save money. But again, that's also a transfer used, which isn't ideal either. So yeah, I don't know. A bit of a clunky situation there with the goalkeepers. That's like the one drawback that you accurately mentioned previously with the team that probably shouldn't have been done. Because yeah, could have just had Sels and a backup goalkeeper and started Sels for the 9 points last game week as well, and had an even better game week last week. Would have had 105 or 106 points last week if they had just had Sels and Fabianski as the backup, basically. But yeah. So yeah, that's just the general advice for this team, and that's been quite the episode. It's been a long time since last time. A lot of things have happened, a lot of things to cover in terms of double game week, in terms of assistant managership. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long episode, but I have all the time stamps as well in the video down below if you want to jump around in the video to get the highlights and stuff. Really happy to be back, and really looking forward to do this more regularly now as well with you, Kevin. We have a lot of time on our hands going forward, and a lot of FPL content to discuss in the future as well. So really happy to see the future of the FPL Scope podcast as well being alive and well. So with all that in mind, thank you for watching from my part. But as always on this podcast, I give you the last word. So let's see if there's any words of encouragement this time from Kevin as we end this podcast.
you know what? I usually tend to sign off in a negative vibe. Usually just say fuck something or fuck you to whoever. This is going to be a bit more of a hopeful and positive message, and I believe one that's very extremely selfish in the sense that I can finally say the School of Science is back, baby. Messiah is ready to rock the shit out of Everton and the rest of the league.
Thank you.